Still, On the Origin would be published in the year 1859, largely due to the fact that Alfred Wallace was already beginning to publish his ideas, and Darwin realized that he had a very short amount of time to actually be the true father of evolution, or Darwinism. In fact, he was right. When he published The Origin of Species, it was immediately hailed as an incredible achievement because it synthesized so many different areas of science, seemingly. It synthesized everything from anatomy to paleontology to embryology, the study of embryos, to biology, or so it was seen. It was in this that he had primarily two great ideas, which he had numerous data, everything from fossils to the geographic distribution of different animals, to the anatomy comparisons of different animals, and to things such as the comparison of different embryos. But his two main ideas were, first, there's a universal common ancestry. We have a common descent, all creatures, all forms of life, from one singular form of life. He said, quote, "All the organic beings which have ever lived on this earth have descended from some one primordial form." So there's a great branching tree of evolutionary life. Secondly, he argued for natural selection, that the fittest species, those that had adapted traits to best survive, were the ones that had the best chances of reproducing. He argued for this from what is known often as artificial selection. The fact that breeders of things such as dogs or sheep or pigeons, all very tangible ideas of the people of the time, because after all, he was addressing a nation that bred all of these creatures. He argued that whereas you see a breeder selectively breeding sheep to have perhaps thicker coats in a colder climate, and eventually that adaptation sticks, he said that nature does the same thing. He said, quote, "Nature gives successive variations. Man adds them up in certain directions useful to him." In other words, nature is somehow behind this, but of course, nature is still random. It's naturalistic. It has no mind behind it. He argued for this idea specifically, saying that there are random variations that just kind of appear in nature, and the variations that are most useful, those are passed on through genes. Now, Darwin didn't use the term genes. Genes were still unknown at this time, but he still argued they were passed on from parent to child, or from the parent to offspring, to describe animals. He also argued that competition for survival means that only the very best adapted creatures actually survive. Now, the book would be widely accepted, especially because, as I mentioned to you earlier, it had so many thorough notes, seemingly. It had so much data. It had so many experiments that Darwin had done with the help, for example, of his 10 children. And it even addressed a whole series of objections that Darwin anticipated, objections that people are still making to this day. It was seen as a game changer because it argued, or at least gave, a thorough explanation in the minds of the culture at the time and to this day that there was a thoroughly naturalistic explanation for how all things came to be, or at least life itself and all of the species of life here in this world. There was therefore no need for a designer, no need for a creator.